We're going where you want to go so you can be where you need to be. It's Road Gang Radio with Lindsay, Lawler, and Jimmy Mack on RadioNemo.com.
It sure is. And this is Madison with a T. I'm very excited for what's up next.
Lindsay, would you care to do the honors? I want to get right into it. I'm really, really stoked. I'm stoked today about your conversation on We Should Write, and I'm really stoked about this particular conversation. Great lineup today. Lou, take it away.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, well, I know you've been up anticipating this. I'm excited. Well, I'm excited to dive into the mind that is David Lynch. We'll dive deeper here. I don't know enough. I think winter is about to become I'm stepping into my David Lynch era. As Taylor Swift says, I'm in my David Lynch era. I'm about to dive deep. And I think the catalyst is this book and this guest and the whole work behind what Tom Huddleston is doing here. So today we're diving into the surreal, the unsettling, the unforgettable world that is David Lynch. And our guest today is Tom Huddleston. He's an author, a journalist, a musician based in North London, whose new book, David Lynch, His Work, His World, explores the vision and the madness of one of the most influential creatives of our times, hands down. Tom spent a decade on the film desk at Time Out before becoming a freelance film and TV journalist for outlets like The Guardian, Little White Lies. He's also written science fiction and fantasy novels for younger readers, including the eco-futuristic Flood World trilogy. And with this latest work, Tom is pulling back the curtain on David Lynch's kaleidoscope universe. Jim, is that a fair term? It's kaleidoscope universe. Okay. All right, good.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, perfect. Where nightmares and dreams collide. It's mundane, both equal parts mundane and magical side by side. And Jim, I may not be a David Lynch scholar, but I'm a huge fan of visionaries, huge fan and fascinated by visionaries like David Lynch. So people who have no rules, they don't need permission. They just go for it. That's exactly why I can't wait for this conversation. Please make welcome to the show our new friend, soon to be yours, Tom Huddleston. Thank you for joining us across the pond, and good morning.
Well, thanks very much for having me, and good afternoon.
Tom,
good afternoon. Yeah, exactly.
Tom, I want to give you the scope of the fandom in my family's home for David Lynch. My wife on Claire's back is Dale Cooper, Laura Palmer, a steaming cup of coffee, a piece of cherry pie, and the Black Lodge patterns are on their back, and so we are massive fans. And I'm kind of curious. Can you hear me, Tom? Tom, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, the signal is breaking up. I can't actually hear anything.
Oh, we're going to actually, Madison, if you wouldn't mind, pick up the phone, talk to Tom here for a second, and Lindsay and I will continue the conversation while we get Tom all straightened away. Dre, if you jump on that for us, please, we'll take care of that real quick. We got to get him back on. I'm too excited about this. To give up on it, Lindsay. I'm really stoked. And by the way, we're talking to Tom from London is what's going on here. So we're making sure that we got this all kind of worked out. Tom, can you hear me? Is the signal breaking up? No. Okay. Just to kind of give you guys a recap of what Lindsay's already said, author, journalist, musician based in North London, and we are talking about his David Lynch book. Lindsay, the first question I'm going to ask the man when he gets on is what inspired him to actually kind of create a book about a filmmaker who can best be described as Encyclopedia Brown finds an ear. I mean, it just crazy, man. How are you this morning, Lindsay? I don't have a Lindsay either, guys. I don't have a Lindsay either. Testing 1, 2, 3, making sure our friends on the chat can hear me. Let me just kind of give a shout out to our friends over there. And can you guys actually hear me this morning? Can you hear me? Let us know. Hey, Marshall, you out there? What's going on? What's the good word? Somebody give me the word here. Just making sure that I'm talking to anybody. It's kind of like Roger Waters says, is there anybody out there? Is there anybody out there? Testing 1, 2, 3. Just making sure our friends are out there. Just kind of checking in, doing the thing here. Really quick reminder, guys, out to you, by the way. Jeremy is going to be joining us on We Should Write. Lindsay Lawler is going to be digging in on We Should Write at the end of the show, and want to kind of give you guys a preview of who's up and coming, who's going to be making their way to us over the next few hours here on Road Gang Radio. Don Cusick is going to be our guest at 10 in the center, 11 in the east. He's a music historian. He's one of the premier historians of country music and an internationally known scholar and writer. As an author, teacher, historian, and songwriter, he's a producer and executive. Cusick has been actively involved in the music business since '73. He's a 2022 inductee of the Western Music Hall of Fame. Cusick is the author of 25 published books, including the biographies of Roger Miller, Dang Him, Elvis in Nashville, Eddie Arnold, I'll Hold You in My Heart, The Life and Career of Gene Autry, The Cowboy Way, Riders. Hey, there you are. Good morning.
Hi, I'm just listening to you go through Don's bio as I read it last night, and I'm like, is there anything he hasn't written or talked about? It's a lot. Did we lose Tom?
Do we have a Tom back in the house? We have a Tom. Tom, are you there?
Yes, I'm back.
All right. What we're going to do, Tom, for the sake of clarity, is Lindsay do a really brief introduction of him again, and then I'll jump in with my first question.
Okay.
All right. Well, Tom, welcome back. Tom's new book out. He's, let's just say, author, journalist, musician, and aficionado of all things David Lynch, his new book. David Lynch, his work, his world, exploring this genius and this visionary. Tom has written and produced and all over the world, all things. But today, our topic is David Lynch. As when we last lost him and went to break, Jimmy was saying that this really came about because Claire, his wife, has David Lynch, essentially his magic and his triumph tattooed all over her back, and that's how this came to be. We're big fans. Glad to have you. Welcome, Black. Glad we're here. Jim, take it away.
Tom, first quick question.
Yes.
What would inspire you to actually explore the world of a man I describe as Encyclopedia Brown finds a severed ear? I don't even know where to begin talking about David Lynch. So what made you decide that you were going to jump in and write a book about Lynch's work?
Well, I think I've probably, in some ways, been writing this book in my head for about the last 25 years. I mean, if not longer. I first saw Twin Peaks when it showed on the BBC in the UK in 1991. I would have been 15 years old, and it changed my head. It changed my life. It became a huge deal for me and all of my friends. We used to watch it over and over again and track down everything that David Lynch did, everything that we could find at the local Blockbuster. So I became fascinated with him from that time, really, and I studied film at university. I went into writing about film with magazines like Time Out, as I think you mentioned. But Lynch was always kind of the number one for me. I was involved with the UK version of the Twin Peaks Festival. The festival started in Spokane in Washington State, but for 10 years there was a UK version, and the moment I received a press release at my desk at Time Out, I immediately contacted a woman called Lindsay who was running the festival, and said, I want to be involved. I'll do anything. You don't have to pay me. I just want to be there. And so for the next 10 years, I did all the onstage cast and crew Q&As at the Twin Peaks UK Festival, and was involved with playing music there and sorting out bands to come and play, and being surrounded by people in all these amazing costumes. So yeah, my Lynch obsession has just been a lifelong thing. So the book actually came about because I was asked to write a book on the author Frank Herbert for Quarto Press. Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune. So I wrote a book called The Worlds of Dune, which was all about the influences that went into the creation of Dune. Obviously, Lynch made the first big screen adaptation of Dune, for better or worse, depending on your opinion of that movie. After the Frank Herbert book was done, and they were happy with it, and I was happy with it, I proposed a book on Lynch because I just really, really wanted to write one, and this is the result.
I'm Tom. I was saying to Jim earlier. My husband actually works in film. I'm a songwriter in Nashville, and so there's a lot of. Well, first of all, we have a lot of synergies with you as well. But we were having a conversation last night about neither one of us have actually watched Twin Peaks, and we sort of decided it's going to be
Her husband.
our winter
I have.
binge.
I have.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Jim has.
Okay.
My husband and I have not, and we were kind of shocked. We were last night. We're like, how have we not done that? But my question to you, because I'm sort of obsessed with visionaries and anyone who's a disruptor, anyone who who creates worlds, who without really caring what anyone thinks, and who really fights for stories and beauty. I'll say it that way. And so I'm curious with something like that, where would be your advice or your entry point for somebody to really dive in, for the first dive into the David Lynch world? I've seen some of his work, but not the whole. But say I'm an idiot and it's David Lynch for dummies. Where would you tell somebody with my interest kind of where to dive in?
I think I would probably begin with Blue Velvet, to be honest. I mean, assuming that you are, an adult, or an adult, as the Americans would say, and that you have a certain amount of, that you're able to tolerate a certain amount of violence and disturbing themes, which Blue Velvet has in spades. I think it's to a large extent his most approachable film. It lays out a lot of the themes that he would go on to explore later. It's a very approachable movie. It's not aggressively, surreal or off-putting in the way that some of the earlier and later work is. Eraserhead at the beginning and Inland Empire towards the end. Those films, wonderful as they are, and I love them as I do, they can be harder work for a newcomer. So I would suggest if you have a strong stomach, go Blue Velvet. If you don't, watch the pilot episode of Twin Peaks, which is very similar to Blue Velvet, but was made for television, so it doesn't have the same level of violence. But
I can do it, Tom. I can do it. I can stomach it.
I'm very jealous of you going into watching Twin Peaks for the first time. All I would say is, when you get to the second season, understand that Lynch didn't have overall control, because things start to slip, particularly in the latter half of the second season. Things go a little off the rails, but there's wonderful stuff all the way through. So I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Yay!
I'm kind of with you on this, Tom. I'm really kind of envious, especially of that first season when Lindsay and her husband get a chance to kind of dig in and watch it. There's a question I wanted to ask you, and by the way, the book is in many ways comprehensive, but also in many ways idiosyncratic, guys, because it really is in some degree a personal relationship with this work as well. One of the things that I've always loved about Lynch is so many auteur filmmakers often get kind of filtered through, even by young American filmmakers, through the lens of how they compare to European filmmakers to a large degree. Lynch is inherently American, and that's what I want a lot of our listeners to understand, that in more ways than a lot of people who are out there creating quote-unquote art house films, Lynch is obsessed with the Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, Encyclopedia Brown, the Boy Scouts, Jimmy Stewart, small town communities. All of that stuff really plays through his work. I mean, he really is the Eagle Scout that he is. And I'm kind of wondering if in many ways you feel like he is a uniquely American filmmaker in regards to a cultural touchstone. And do I make sense asking that?
Absolutely, you make sense asking that, and absolutely, I think he is. I don't think his work could have been produced outside America, and by someone who wasn't raised in 1950s suburban America. He was very much a product of his time and his kind of culture. I think Americans probably have a relationship to Lynch that someone like myself, a European, is unable to have. But equally, I think that all perspectives on an artist like Lynch are equally valid. I think he would say the same thing himself. He refused to interpret his work, and he always said that the audience interpretations of his work, whatever they might be, were equally valid. So I didn't feel any sense of kind of that I was the wrong person for the job in writing about Lynch because I'm not American. But I understand that some Americans may disagree. You said it's kind of a personal and idiosyncratic look at Lynch. It's funny because I actually tried as much as possible to remove myself from the writing. I didn't want too much to make this a book about my own relationship with David Lynch. I wanted it to be quite factual, but he's such a personal. His films are so personal, and the relationship that fans of his work have with his films is so personal and I think kind of intimate in a way that you don't get with a lot of other filmmakers. But I think my personality and my personal relationship with his films just leaked through, no matter how much I tried to avoid it. I think that every time you read something about David Lynch, you're learning as much about the person who's writing it as you are about Lynch himself, which is one of the things I find fascinating about him. Everyone has their own relationship to his work, and there are so many different interpretations. It's really wonderful.
No, and I meant that, by the way. I want to make this really clear. I meant that as a compliment. My wife has my wife has told me point blank when I got the copy of this handsomely hardbound in a case book, my wife said, "You enjoy it, and when that interview is over with, you put it in a package, in a care package, and you send it out to me in California because it's mine." There's a whole bunch of great stuff in here, and like I said, it's almost unavoidable, Lindsay, to kind of find this stuff that you also make sure people are reminded, along with being an inherently American director, he's also, people forget this, Lindsay, he is considered by many people to be a horror filmmaker. That you could make a case that the new movie Weapons, the new movie Together, that the work of Ari Aster on Eddington, a lot of other stuff does not exist without the world of David Lynch coming into existence. And there's a beautiful layout here, Lindsay, of Robert Blake playing a very creepy character, Mystery Man from Lost Highway, and the shot is right along next to the Carnival of Souls man that follows the lady around from that. And I was kind of wondering, as you were putting this book together, if you made any personal or any historical discoveries that you weren't ready for and caught you by surprise or filled you with delight.
I don't know. That's a very good question. I mean, I obviously I read an awful lot about Lynch while I was writing it. Yes, actually, one thing that I really did find really interesting was this idea that in the late 90s, he was working on a video game, and it would have been called Woodcutters from Fiery Ships, which later became the title of a song that he released. And it would have involved. It was inspired by a kind of a Japanese game, kind of set in a sort of pseudo 50s world, an industrial world. And his game, it was set to be one of those sort of a game that you sort of wander around more than It wouldn't have been high action or jumping up and catching mushrooms or anything. It was just a sort of a landscape to wander around in, and it just sounded really, really fascinating. And having seen Twin Peaks: The Return, in which these woodsmen are sort of the demonic figures that recur throughout the series, and then reading about this project, which would have involved kind of woodsmen in strange ships abducting people in Los Angeles. I found that really, really fascinating to see that, with Lynch, it's so often the case that no idea was ever wasted. So, even though this game fell apart, he made plans to make it, but then the financing fell through, or he was too busy. No one seems to really know exactly why it fell apart. He took some of those ideas and they filtered through into Twin Peaks: The Return. And another thing actually that I learned while I was writing the book, and that again goes back to Twin Peaks: The Return, which I think is a series that I will watch and rewatch for the rest of my life and find new things in and find endlessly fascinating. But Lynch often said, he had this sort of gee or shucks persona that I don't think was false in any way. I think it was who he was. But he would often say, he would often come off like he hadn't seen much in the way of kind of surrealist cinema or kind of highbrow arty stuff. Your Renoirs and your Cocteaus and your all those guys. But actually, in the 80s, he presented an episode of a long-running British documentary, tea time mainstream TV documentary series about surrealist cinema. He didn't direct it, and I'm not sure if he wrote it, but he presented it. He's sitting in the cinema, speaking to camera, all about his favourite surrealist films, and watching them. The amount of images in the films that he screens that then later find echoes in his work, and particularly in Twin Peaks: The Return, is really amazing. There's all of this stuff must have just gone straight into his head and been regurgitated, 3 decades later, because there are golden balls, there are strange creatures, there are flickering and flashing across the screen in a way that happened in Twin Peaks: The Return. So yeah, that was watching that was really. And David Lynch also talks about how much he loves snooker, which is a hilarious thing to witness. Snooker, for those who don't know, is kind of the English version of pool. But yes, it's a wonderful thing. I think you can probably track it down online somewhere. It's called Roost, Roses and Revolver. It's David Lynch talking about surreal cinema. It's a wonderful thing to watch. But yeah, so those were kind of two of the great discoveries that I made while writing the book.
We're talking with Tom Huddleston, the book, which is out now, David Lynch, His Work, His World. Pick it up, and you will not only get great dinner party conversation, you'll get just something beautiful to sit on your coffee table. Tom, I'm really fascinated. Well, when I going through your book and just kind of going through David's work, juxtaposition is the word that comes to me. So, well, first of all, I'm wildly intrigued by David Lynch's work and practice of transcendental meditation, and how I'm curious how his, like, that kind of the spiritual life really informed the dreamlike qualities of his work. But then in addition to that, I'd love your take on, so much of David's work seems to explore like these hidden darknesses that are under seemingly perfect worlds. And I'm just curious if that comes from, his own biography, or if it's more of a commentary on America as a whole, that coupled with how much does his spiritual practice play into these worlds he created, you think?
I think Lynch was someone who saw the world in quite black and white terms. I think he believed in good and evil. I think that, or in light and dark, certainly. I think that, as a younger man, he was fascinated with the darkness, as I think, all teenagers are to some extent. And then in his late 20s, early 30s, he discovered transcendental meditation, and it seemed to give him a direct connection to the light, as it were. And this is, something that he carried with him for the rest of his life. He meditated twice a day for the next, 50 odd years, until the day of his death. So yeah, and I think that the kind of lightness in his work, the goodness, often comes from a place of spirituality, a place of innocence, and the darkness comes from a place of corruption and sort of and cruelty. So yeah, I don't think he witnessed much corruption and cruelty as a kid. I think he talks about his childhood as being very innocent and very perfect. I think he was probably aware that what he saw wasn't all there was, and that there was a darkness in the world that that he hadn't really been exposed to. But yes, I think it is to a large extent from his imagination. I don't think the brutality in the films is in any way reflective of his own life. In fact, I'm sure that's not the case. He had, I think he would agree, quite a privileged and happy existence. Not wealthy by any stretch, but certainly comfortable for all of his childhood. And,
isn't that Tom, fascinating though, when the darkness sort of comes from it's kind of two big things. I've thought about this with Ozzy Osbourne lately. Like, it's either from the lived experience or from the curiosity of what that lived experience might be, if that resonates.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think in Lynch particularly, he was just incredibly curious. He was incredibly curious about other people's lives. He always talked about, when he was living in Philadelphia and was surrounded by factories and industry, and a lot of which, was crumbling and falling apart, and these factories were emptied and abandoned. And he would imagine what the lives of the people who worked in those factories must have been like. And, I think he really loved to imagine himself into other people's lives. I think, and it's something that echoes throughout his filmography. I mean, he's often accused of misogyny, and I think that there's an argument to be had there and a debate to be had there. But I also think that one thing that can't be overlooked is that he put himself into his characters, whether they're male or female or young or old. They were all him. So when horrible things are being done to women in Lynch films, they're being done to him. So yes, I think he loved to imagine the darkness, and he loved to explore the darkness in his mind and in his work. I don't think he would ever have particularly enjoyed it. He always said that the artist living in a garret and being poor was a myth that he loved to dispel. He said you didn't need to suffer in order to depict suffering. But yeah, it's interesting how fascinated with that darkness he was, but also how fascinated he was with light. And there's joy in all of his films as well, and there's humor in all of his films, and people often overlook how funny those films are.
Go ahead, Lindsay.
Well, I was going to say, Jim, we'll have to have Tom back. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but we didn't even get to touch on songwriting, the music pieces, the video game world. There's so many other things. I'd love to talk songwriting and music with you as well. So, Tom, please come back sometime.
Absolutely. Happily.
Tom, we're going to actually reach out to you. We're going to bring you back in October to talk about all the spooky stuff we talk about over the month. And by the way, I always get a new insight. You both gave me one. I didn't realize until just now, Lindsay, the good guys in any David Lynch film, when there are good guys, are really good. They are really decent, wholesome, great people.
They are perfect. And they're also surprisingly similar to David Lynch.
Yeah. It's, by the way,
one way or another.
We got to cut you loose to get our next guest in on here, but I'm going to tell you right now, Lindsay, it once was described to me that the films of David Lynch are Jimmy Stewart Goes to Hell, and I never was more clearer than after this conversation. Thank you, Tom Huddleston. David Lynch, his works, his world is now available to buy. It is so worth it if you're a film buff. And by the way, just to make you happy out there, Tom, on the chat, they are literally talking about Denise Bryson. Get out of here. Thank you, man.